Hello, it's Nev. I'm gonna go through a Solo Ranger 80% speedrun tutorial. Um, this will be for somewhat experienced players, people who've played the game, who know the basics essentially. Um, I'm not gonna go through any basic learning tutorials. I'm gonna assume you've already kind of played the game enough to understand it. I'm just gonna go through what you need to know in terms of the speedrun. Um, how this particular category works, which is the 80% category, the non-DLC 80% category, is getting to the end boss, which is the Hollow King, as fast as possible. Then after you kill him, you exit the menu and you look at your character's in-game time, and that's what the speed run's based off the in-game time. For the 80% category, I choose to use a Ranger, the Ranger class, because I feel it's the fastest class to get elemental weapons, which are good against world bosses and enemies, at the lowest level. And in this particular game, leveling fast is one of the slower elements to it, so you want to be trying to level up as fast as possible, as quick as possible, to get good enough weapons to continue with the speedrun. The current route requires you, for now, to kill all the 2 world bosses before you get to the Hollow King. That being the Worm God, or the Worm Boss being the first one, and then the Dragon Boss is the second one, and then the third one is the Hollow King. The route that I'm currently using to go from beginning to end is one set by SamofHearts in her speedrun. It's the first video I watched before I got into this category. And I pretty much used her routing of island hopping. Essentially how islands and the game kind of works is you make portals to jump between islands, and on one of the islands there will be a quest for you to get a key, and that key will be what you use to open up a boss world portal, and that's what you will do to kill the worm and the dragon and the Hollow King. One of the first things you need to start off doing when you're doing this category is changing your settings. So if you're doing this on PC, I'm not too sure what the required settings are, but if you're doing it on console, there's some tips that I would recommend. Alright, so first things first, in my PlayStation menu, I've swapped L1 and L2, R1 and R2. So even though you're seeing L1 here, this is my L2 on my controller. I'll explain why when we get into the game, but for now, just understand that when you're seeing L1 or R1, it means L2 and R2. So evade or descend is rolling, and rolling is one of the fastest movements in the game. And it's very useful, especially for dodging ads and not taking damage, and generally moving around is faster than walking. However, you can also do something called bunny hopping, which is technically faster, and essentially all that is timing jumps. So you're hitting X just before you land, and you're essentially carrying your momentum between each jump, where you get faster and faster and faster, and you can go really fast real quick. However, this I've not found too viable in a speedrun, because a lot of the bunny hopping technique kind of requires more flatter surfaces to do it well. And in this game, because it's randomly generated textures and terrains, most of the time it's not really flat surfaces. Most of the time it is quite hilly or bumpy, or it's not very flat, and unfortunately I haven't found ways to utilize it in a way effectively yet. Not saying that you can't. A good example that explains movements and bunny hopping, and a good tutorial, is videos by Cookiest Monster, who's done a great job kind of explaining how movement kind of works in this game and doing various movement tests. So give that a watch if you're interested in understanding how movement works. So the reason why I bind it to my controller L2, or as you see here L1, is because I can press and hold it down and keep rolling whilst using the rest of the controller for other things. So I might be swapping items or using other buttons, essentially. It's quite easy. You just press and hold it down and you're already using the fastest movement. It's a very simple way of doing it, rather than pressing a button or tapping a button or something like that. The other thing I change as well is that on my action bar, it has to become L3, because I'm using the the L1 or my L2. So all I do now is I just make it L3, which is clicking in on the left stick when I'm swapping stuff on my action slot bar. That's essentially the customized controller options that I prefer to use. In gameplay, pretty much I think it's all the same. I think maybe tutorial I take off, I'm not too sure if that's on the default, but essentially this is what I have. And then on display, I make field of view for first person and third person on maximum. On console, I prefer to swap between first and third person depending on what I'm doing. So I want the widest field of vision as much as possible to help me plan my next move, so that's why I do that. I take off detailed objects because, and a good example of this is like in the first world, when you add detail, you have this very lovely looking grass, but it sometimes hides the enemies and it's harder to see. So when you take it off, it makes this flatter, very green texture for grass, but it's easier to see the enemies and the ads that you need to kill, especially for the first world where you need to kill slimes as soon as possible. So it's really good to take detail objects off. Alright, after that you just want to create character. As you can see here, Ranger has increased movement, which we don't care about too much, and they get a boost in dexterity, which is increased Ranger damage, which essentially all our points will be going into damage. So you'll see that as we progress. This section, I don't think there's any. I think this is all customization. It doesn't affect any part of the game at all. Let's tap capital T here. There we go. And then, as you saw there, that's the in-game time. Just on the left says 0 seconds. So that's what the timer is based off. So you have to create a new world in this category. Always have to start from scratch. And you can name it whatever you want. So the island size that I use is normal or compact islands. Now you can get a large world, and I think on PC you can get a giant world. The reason why I stay on compact is it's easier to find portals. On larger worlds, they can sometimes be very awkward or hard to get spots. There are some advantages to a larger world, meaning there are more ads to kill, which means if that's the way you're choosing to level or you're looking for a specific item, it's more useful to have a larger world to have more ads. But the current way that I run, I don't find it necessary, and I find it easier to have smaller islands because you can roughly tell where most pools are going to be. There are still RNG elements to it you can't control, but I prefer smaller islands just to navigate through quicker. Essentially just going to create it, and as we load in, you just want to spam X to skip the cinematic in the beginning. There you go, you heard a little bit of the music there. And so as we start, the first thing I kind of discovered is that you can actually swap between your action bar before you spawn in. So as you see the name for the world that you're entering, you can kind of swap between different items on your action bar. And if I stay silent, you can maybe hear it. So you hear me like I can swap between stuff. So you have a little bit of a delay before you can actually like move in this world when you spawn in, which gives you advantage to swap between an item that you want to swap to. I usually swap to the 4th slot because it allows me to whack things. I think you do spawn with your bow in hand, but I prefer to swap to this so I can start whacking specific items. The first thing I'm going to do is I want to get 5 stone. I always start this way by getting 5 stone, so I kind of look around to find 5 stone. 4 of the stone will go into building a pickaxe, which is a very useful tool, especially when you're starting off. And the 1 extra is so it stays in my action bar. And I'll explain more once I pick up some wood. So first things first, make yourself a stone pickaxe. And essentially stuff like this, stuff that I don't want in an action bar, I get rid of, and then I put it in my 4th slot. We're going to need cotton, wood, berries, and blue shards. So essentially what I do in the beginning is I want to get a mixture of all the elements I'm going to need. So hopefully, alright, got to find someone that's going to drop some blue shards. There we go. And then the last thing I need to find is some berries. Alright, So now, essentially, all I want to have in my hotbar is all the elements that are crucial. So as you see on the bottom, we got our stone, we got our pickaxe, wood, cotton, bluestone shards, and our berries. And it just makes it easier to keep on track because we have to collect quite a few of these items, and it just makes it easier for me to see if they're all on the hotbar rather than having to go to my inventory every time just to check what's going on. So for this world, we need about 35-36 wood, 28 cotton, 10 stone, and 20 shards. The reason why I say about 35-36 for wood is because we need 53 in total, but we will be getting wood later on in the run. So it's one of those elements where you can get them all right now, or you can just get them later. And so I prefer just to get it later in the run that I'm currently doing. So all essentially what you're looking for now is you want things grouped up as much as possible. So you essentially, I'll get one more tree and then that's that done. So I've got my 3 berries, I've got 40 wood, and I've got my 10 stone. So all I need now is cotton. So I don't need to waste time killing everything else. But you essentially want things in like tight groups. You don't want to be wasting time going to like far out places just to get one piece of cotton. So all this, for example, in a very close-knit area, excellent stuff for us. So there we go. So I've got 32, which is more than enough. So essentially now all I need to do is get my 20 shards. This is by far the biggest RNG element to this world, to the first world, is slimes. You kind of want a lot of slimes to spawn, and you want them to drop shards. They can drop none, 1, or 2. Getting 2 is great, but rare. Sometimes you can have a run where they drop 2 like all the time, or you have some where they drop nothing all the time. So you just kind of go through that. Right now I don't care about taking damage too much, because you have quite a lot of health, they don't do that much damage, and you actually get hearts sometimes from your kills. So parrots don't drop experience, they have a chance to drop shards, but they don't drop any experience, which is kind of a negative thing. But sometimes if you don't have a lot of slimes in the world, you just have to take what you can get. Killing slimes off the edge is not great, because sometimes the shards can fall off. A good time that you want to be out of this first world is about 4 to 5 minutes. You don't want to be spending any longer on this world. It's usually about 4 to 5 minutes is all you need. So you roll around here, see if there's any. So sometimes you get orange slimes. It's a bit random whether they spawn or not. They're just a little bit harder to kill, but they're about the same drop rate as a green slime. So there's no real advantage or disadvantage if you do or do not have it. So I'm going to dodge this one because it might do enough damage. I don't want it to kill me. So now finally, when you see this tower is a great spot to get to when you're about at 16 to 18 shards, as you see in the over here. So these blue stone shards. And essentially, I usually drop down, but I've lost quite a lot of health, so I'm not going to drop down just in case I die. But you drop down here, and you want to kill this guy. And how I like to do is I like to make him follow me, like this. And then we open this chest, and this chest has a chance to drop 2 to 4 shards. So this one dropped 3 this time, and then he sometimes can drop 2. Alright, he dropped 1. And so this is a good place. This will always have shards and health potions. So I get this because this will be useful for later on in the run, because most of this will be quite under-leveled and under-armored, so we're quite susceptible to high amounts of damage. So part of the tutorial quests is doing a series of tasks, and you get XP for teleporting back to the landing pad, which you see here holding triangle, which is another way of movement. Which is if you ever need to get back to home fast, so instead of me having to climb all the way up the stairs, I just hold triangle and I go back to the landing pad which I spawned in. And a part of this is you get experience the first time you use it, so this should get me to a level up, which it does. And then during the animation of me teleporting, I usually menu stuff because you can't move in that time frame, so you can do a little bit of menuing between. And then, like I said, for the ranger run, dexterity is all you need. So you give that and give bow expert, which gives you 25% more damage. And by this time, hopefully the as you killed have respawned, which gives you enough. But we've got 20 shards, So we're actually good to go now. So the first portal comes with 2, so you need 4. And how you make stones is how you just go here and make stones, and you should have 10. And then what I like to do is I do this. So portals take a time to load, so whilst they're loading, I just chuck this stuff back in, and then I roll in. And that's pretty much the end of the first world.